Okay, yep, I see some people are showing up, checking in, so that's good. All right. My system seems to be having a little bit of a lag time for whatever reason, so I pray it through that it's all gonna work out just fine. Okay, let's see who else we have here. I see Merup is checked in. Good morning, Merup.
Good morning.
Alexa is here. Good morning, Alexa.
Good morning.
And Mason. All right, we'll go ahead and get underway. So good morning, everyone. And it's official, it's week six. So we are definitely moving right along, nearly halfway through the semester. And today we are going to pick up with topic 3. It's in my internet is a little unstable, so bear with me on this. Okay, so we're going to be working on topic 3 having to do with messages and verbal and nonverbal listening and how we listen. And it should be quite interesting. So I certainly enjoyed putting this lecture together. And make sure you have your notes out and that you are ready to get underway to learn some new tools that I think will be quite helpful. Okay, so let's go ahead and get going. Make sure you're taking notes. I will be asking questions and having you get involved in today's lecture, so take good notes. Hey there, students. If you can believe it, it is week 6, and we are on topic 3 having to do with messages, sending those verbal and nonverbal messages, and learning how to listen. Again, welcome to COM 222, Small Group Communication. Let's get on with it. Hey there, students. We're going to move into learning about nonverbal perceptions, and we're going to do an exercise with this as well. So get ready for that. But I just wanted to confirm about nonverbal cues and how we read signals from, the changes in others and how their behavior changes. And what that involves having to do with our speech and or verbalization. We tend to evaluate visual nonverbal cues such as facial expressions, head movement, hand gestures, body movements, and as well as auditory and tactile cues that take place. So let's get into this particular lesson that states that within nonverbal language, we can sometimes understand that it can be very powerful and that verbal language of a person takes careful consideration. So this exercise asks, have you ever been listening to a speaker making a positive comment but shaking their head no? I've seen that. What does this tell the listener about the speaker's message? Does the speaker believe what they say that they're saying? This assignment will give you an opportunity to determine what a person's nonverbal language might be saying about them within the context of their office or their environment. For example, visiting someone's office. A professional or a professional person or observe the office carefully throughout this particular assignment. So what I'll need you to do is create about a 250 to 500 word verbal sketch of a room's layout. That can be in bullet point lists such as, the table or any creative way of presenting this particular sketch of a room. Okay, so I want you to notice the placement of the desk. Notice the placement of the artifacts such as photos and paintings and any type of art decorations and equipment. Also, I want you to notice the general tidiness of the room. Notice also the choice of color and the textures and the kinds of quality of the objects in the room. Notice whether or not there's a view, and also notice the size of the room and the amount and kind of lighting in the room. Okay, so this is going to be something that we're going to work on as an exercise. It should be pretty fun. Let's see how you do, okay? Okay, so this particular exercise will be what we'll work on for your blended learning activity on Friday. So I will send out a reminder of this. Is there does anyone have any questions about this?
I have a question.
Yes, hi, Tage.
Hello, good morning. The 250 word to 500 sketch, is that just kind of like a rough draft for us? And then, or do we have to turn that in also along with the 500 word? Uh,
Actually, it is your rough draft, of the layout, okay?
okay,
And just so you can kind of get a feel for that. And then at the bottom, as you can see here, it says write 500 to 700 word paper to discuss this nonverbal and language presented in the office, and include the following. So, what conclusions can you draw about this person based on your perception of their office? So this will be something that you'll probably have to find a site or something that's on campus and try to utilize this exercise on it. All right.
okay.
So, does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. I just want to know if we had to turn the verbal sketch also too. But yes, thank you.
No, I don't think you'll need to turn the sketch in. Okay.
Okay.
All righty. Thank you so much. Good question. All right, we'll move on to the next portion, and let's go. Okay, so now let's move into the objectives of today's lecture. And we again are in topic 3, and we're in what about week 6? So we're going to examine messages, and again, how these verbal and nonverbal cues affect our listening. We're going to first compare verbal and nonverbal language. We're going to also identify common language difficulties, and then we're going to learn to distinguish between the types of listening. Okay, this information is derived from basically chapter 6 and 7 from your textbook. So if you want to open that up at this time, and so you can have something to review along with in case you have questions or comments. Here we go. As we observe others listening and doing some people watching, as we all often do, we have to understand that throughout the globe, there are certain mannerisms and types of etiquette that are appropriate. So, next, we're going to evaluate the etiquette of exchanging business cards from an Asian country. And I want you just to take a look, and we'll have some idea of what is appropriate and what is not, and maybe how we can learn to be more appropriate in being around others and exchanging business cards. Here we go.
Hello, I'm Cindy Seed, an etiquette coach based in San Francisco. The Asian culture has influenced the world in how we give and receive, use and keep business cards. They believe it's an extension of introducing yourself on paper. So whether you are traveling the world or simply conducting business in your own hometown, this ritual of Asian-style business card exchanges is now considered an international business protocol. The Asians believe a business card is a representation of who you are, and you are that business card. Be sure to present your card in clean, pristine condition, no different than you would your own body. Always present your card in your right hand or with both hands, facing the person to whom you are giving it. It is not appropriate to pass out cards as though you were dealing in a poker game. Never give a card in your left hand. It is considered a total insult in Muslim and other countries. So again, always present it in your right hand or with both hands. By presenting your card with both hands, it is the highest form of respect. Always receive a card in the same manner you presented it, either in the right hand or with both hands. Take time to study the card. This is your golden opportunity to help remember the person long after meeting. Ask the person a question or make a nice comment about the card. It's natural. You may want to make notes on a card, especially when the person asks you to please send them a brochure. But be sensitive, especially while still in front of the person, never to write on the face of the card. The Japanese believe it's like writing on the person's face. Instead, write any notes on a separate notepad. Remember never to take a card and immediately put it away. And gentlemen, do not pull your back pocket wallet out, place that card in the wallet, return it to your back hip pocket, and then sit on it. It's like sitting on a person's face. Always keep cards in a separate card carrying case. No more rubber bands or paper clips, which always dents them terribly. Keep the case in a purse or pocket that is located on the upper part of your body. And again, never place them in a back, hip, or pants pocket. Never ask a person for another card because you lost it. It is perceived as though you have lost their face. So do get those cards filed or entered into your database right away for safekeeping. So there you have it, a few simple tips on how to exchange business cards anywhere in the world. I'm Cindy Seed. Happy practicing.
I'm quite sure that this is a bit of new information.
Hi, I'm Mark Kemsley. We're talking about doing business in China, and we're concentrating now on the business greeting. This is of utmost importance. The first thing in the business greeting to understand is the business card itself. You know, in China, if you don't have a business card, it's like not having a name. It's an absolute necessity.
Okay, so sorry, just get back to our main topic here. Wow. Okay, so with this, now I'd just like to quickly go through and ask, we're going to maybe what you guys got out of this. I mean, there are some formalities specifically in representing yourself, passing out cards, and sharing and showing the highest form of respect. So let's start with Phoenix. Phoenix, what is this, some new information that you've learned, or are you familiar with this form of exchanging business cards?
I've actually never really had a discussion on how to like receive or give out and business cards, but that was the first time I heard about it.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I think it's very important, especially in our global world that we're living in, you know, having so many different cultures that are here in the States, or whether or not we're traveling. So that's some very valuable information, especially within the Asian culture. They're very sensitive to getting to know each other and going about that process of getting to know each other. So remember, the other thing is when you are passing out your business cards, you try to touch the least amount of the card as possible, and as if it's something as a treasure even. And I think she gave us some really good tips. So this will kind of just give us a start. I'm talking about verbal and nonverbal communication. So even this in this exchange of business cards, there may not be words that are even spoken. It's just a formality that takes place and a form of etiquette. Even if you're then like at a business meeting and then you go and have a seat, you still do not put the business card away. You just gently put the business card in front of you as if you're still kind of admiring it or treasuring it, and how it represents the individual. So yeah, I thought it's some good news in order to find that out as well. Let's go ahead to the next area. So,
You know why it's disrespectful to give it with your left hand?
yes, I absolutely do. It's because in some countries, individuals use their left hand to wipe themselves. Hello, are you there? Who was that asked that question?
I did.
Yeah, Courtney. Yeah. So, yeah, the right hand is the most significant hand. Even in some Arab countries, they do not shake hands with their, with certain hands. They will shake maybe the wrist area. But we will learn throughout this some nonverbal gestures. But it is very offensive to use it with your left hand. Oftentimes, here in the States, a lot of us are left-handed. People are left-handed. And so you kind of favor that particular hand, your left hand. But in Asian culture and Middle Eastern cultures, it is one of the greatest offenses to do anything with that hand. So yeah, it's good to learn some of these cultural things. So Courtney, since we're kind of with you, what are 3 things that you've learned about this etiquette and exchanging business cards?
Well, I learned that you're not supposed to give it with your left hand, and to not like put it in your back pocket, like to make sure to have like a separate like place to like put it,
Right.
and to like also not put it away right away. Like make sure that you're looking at it and like maybe have questions about it or something like that, like you're analyzing it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, within the Asian culture, they, especially on a first time meeting, it's so different than in the US, where we try to get a lot of business information in. We try to size a person up. We want to even conduct some business exchange information about, maybe the quality of our business or who we are, kind of exchange our resume, verbally with individuals. And that is really not appropriate either. It's kind of a turnoff even. They take this time to get to know individuals. The next stage would probably be having a meal together. And even at that meal, you probably would not discuss any business. It's just a form of getting to know each other. So yeah, so I think this was kind of a valuable lesson. Courtney, thank you so much for sharing. Okay, now let's dive right into learning some more information about true verbal communication. It really focuses on how we use words and language. And interaction may be face-to-face, fax-to-fax, over the phone, or through electronic mail. But regardless of the channel we use, groups do their work through language. Verbal language is really used, or we use the words to share information with other people. It can therefore, of course, include both spoken and written communication, but most times, many people use this term to describe only the spoken form of communication, as we refer to verbal communication. Okay, so in this verbal and nonverbal communication, it's really a time where both of these tend to complement each other. So, early on when we're discussing the possibility of, have you ever been around someone that is speaking very positively about something, but they're shaking their head to the side as negative or non-positive gestures? It contradicts maybe what they're saying. So these are things that we need to really be aware of. And I think this is what's really kind of exciting about learning some of these facial expressions and gestures. So verbal and nonverbal are typically used to complement one another, and they should really, act as a checkpoint to make sure you're saying what you mean. All right, let's move forward. So now that you have a little clearer understanding of communication and verbal communication, let's move right on into nonverbal. What is the meaning of nonverbal? So we look at this through the aspects of communication, such as using these gestures and or facial expressions that that don't necessarily involve this verbal portion of communication, but include the nonverbal aspects of the speech itself. For example, nonverbal specifically refers to a message or message components other than just the words that generate a certain meaning. Without nonverbal component, it could be really difficult to interpret the meaning of the spoken language. So some researchers claim that we convey as much as 2/3 of our meaning through nonverbal communication and behavior. Additionally, we find within this nonverbal communication that we have to look at the aspects of speech itself, as I mentioned, such as the accent. Is it your first or second language? We have to also decipher the tone of voice and the speed of the speaking. So these are other valuable tools that are involved with this form of nonverbal communication that we need to be aware of. So just kind of as a rule of thumb, we look at how, verbal is how we say something, and with nonverbal, it's how we look. So that's a good way of comparing the two, and really a simple analogy. So now that you have, next, this information describes the types of nonverbal communication. And as you can see, they include body language, and also posture, eye contact, this paralanguage, closeness and or personal space, the proximity of how close we are and distance, facial expressions, and psychological changes. This one area in the kinesics has to do with the body movement. For example, hand gestures and nodding, shaking your head, etc. We all do these on a regular basis. The next one is posture, and or how you or we stand and sit, and whether our arms are crossed, and so on. Next, we talk about the eye contact. This has to do with the amount of eye contact often determines the level of trust and trustworthiness. I must admit, this is still one that I still am working on personally, keeping that true eye-to-eye contact. Next, we look at the paralanguage, and this has to do with the aspects of the voice apart from speech, such as the pitch and the tone and the speed of the speaking. Often in public speaking, we learn how to utilize our words, and we want to have certain tones and emphasize certain areas that we want to control how people are listening to what we are saying. So that has to do with the paralanguage. Next, we look at the closeness and the space, having to do with the proximity, which determines that level of intimacy. Sometimes we get a little uncomfortable if someone is too close upon us, and so this has a lot to do with different cultures and what is appropriate and maybe a little inappropriate for some. Next, we look at the facial expressions, including smiling, of course, blinking, having to do with certain intensity, and this facial expression that we use often sets the tone of comfortability throughout the world. Some countries, such as Asia, they don't really like you smiling too much. It's an area that they as look at as maybe mistrust. Okay, so that has to do with facial expressions. And then there's also the psychological changes. For example, um, sometimes we might blink too much. We might not be aware of this. We might be having a little bit of sweat or perspiration if we're a little nervous. And our heart rate might increase as well. So these are some things that we might not even be able to control, but therefore they are very important in the psychological aspects of this nonverbal communication. So certain things to be aware of as we are communicating with others. Okay, I wanted to just take a moment to ask some of you here in class whether or not you are aware of any of these on this particular list, or have issues with some of these during the time, you know, like with you're having a conversation with someone. Let's go with David. David, are you there?
Yeah,
Hi, David. How are you today?
pretty good. How are you?
I'm getting better, thank you. Let's see, so within this list that we've just gone over, as I mentioned, you know, I have this issue. I always feel that I have great eye contact with individuals, but I find that there's just areas sometimes that if it's too long of a conversation, then I feel like embarrassed that I'm still kind of looking in their deep in their soul. Any of these have a reaction? Do you have a reaction to something that you might do or not do or need to improve?
I'd probably say eye contact. Probably need to improve on eye contact, especially when I'm talking to new people.
Right,
Uh,
absolutely. Yeah, I also teach public speaking, and oftentimes, you know, that's a big thing that, you know, when you're addressing the audience, we're to pan the room and to try to make eye contact with the individuals that we are speaking with. That kind of invites them in a little bit more. But there's kind of this secret that that I always share, is that if you have a problem with that eye contact issue, then you can just kind of look at maybe the top of their forehead, and it still will appear that you're looking in their eyes, but you're not. So, you know, I think we're teaching ourselves and trying to break bad habits or learn new habits. So that's just a trick of the trade that often happens. Another one is that psychological changes of, you know, where people are become aware of if you blink too much. And I think that that's something that most people are not aware of. This automatic process that starts happening where you tend to blink or over blink. Or for some, you might just break out in a cold sweat. So, you know, these are some of the psychological changes that take place. David, thanks so much. Next, this information. Okay. Throughout the textbook, this information is primarily being delivered in chapter 6, and specifically having to do with verbal and nonverbal communication in groups. So in the first portion, we are going to learn how to really identify the differences between this verbal communication and nonverbal. Next, we're going to give some examples and understanding the 6 dimensions of the effect of team talk. Then we'll move into identifying specific language-based obstacles. There are always some obstacles that we have to be aware of in respect to effective communication. And then we'll move into offering some recommendations of appropriate responses to gender influences and cultural-based differences having to do with the use of language. And then finally, we will examine these challenges of how we are interpreting nonverbal messages and adapting to these nonverbal messages. Okay, here we go. So we have quite a bit to go over today, so we're going to move right into this verbal, nonverbal groups and see what we have here. So as we kick this off, in Chapter 6, the information that we're specifically honing in on has to do with these two essential tools, having to do with one, communication, and the second is nonverbal communication. So let's get started on that and see where we're going to end. All right, here we go. Okay, let's get started by checking out this short video clip. I love this particular presenter. He really gives an authentic and well-spoken interpretation for us to understand verbal and nonverbal communication. So let's take a listen and watch and see what he has to share with us. Yeah, this is Dr. Alex Lyon, and he really shares from maybe a Christian perspective. He really is quite knowledgeable about the information that he has studied and the research that he...
This week, we're going to be talking about verbal and nonverbal communication. And we have a special guest with us, my YouTube friend, Mary Daphne, and she is going to be helping us out. So let's get into it. I'd like to introduce you to my friend Mary Daphne. She has her own YouTube channel.
Hey Alex, thanks for having me on your channel. I am so excited to be here.
Mary Daphne's channel helps millennials boost your social skills with a focus on relationship, productivity, and mental wellness. And at any point, you can find a link to her channel in the description below this video. So please take a look, subscribe, and show her some support. The main point of this video is that we observe verbal and nonverbal communication at the same moment. We don't usually separate these when we express ourselves, and we don't usually separate them when we are listening to somebody else communicate. We experience them all at the same moment. So both of these complement each other. A basic definition of verbal communication is the words and other utterances we use to express ourselves. Not surprising. Nonverbal communication is all of the rest. It's how you look, like your gestures and your face, and also how you sound, like your tone of voice, pacing, and pauses. So clearly, verbal communication has specific meaning, and some people think that nonverbal communication works the same way. Some people claim that they can literally read your nonverbals as if they know the secret code. But is that really the case? That's what we're going to talk about. Let's ask Mary Daphne what she thinks. Do nonverbal cues, like gestures, have specific meanings or not?
You know, Alex, that's a very interesting question. One way we can think about nonverbal gestures is through emblems and illustrators. Emblems are the nonverbal cues that have a universal meaning within a specific culture. For example, if we're talking about American culture, when we give a thumbs up, we know that means good job, or circling our index finger next to our ear means that person is totally crazy. A really cool thing to note, however, is that emblems are decided by a particular society. This means that in one culture, a gesture could be very different from what it denotes in another culture. I remember when I was teaching a communication class in Istanbul, Turkey, and there were some Middle Eastern exchange students who were offended by the thumbs up gesture because it means something derogatory in their cultural context. So we have to be mindful that while emblems can have agreed upon meanings, they're inextricably linked to their cultural context. And so the meaning can vary significantly from culture to culture. Now, illustrators are interesting because unlike emblems, we use these automatically and subconsciously to illuminate the words we're speaking. It helps us paint a picture that our words are expressing. They're not explicitly taught to us or tied to a culture. They're often unique to the person, timing, and situation. Let's say someone's excited to see their friend. In addition to saying, "It's so great to see you," they use big sweeping gestures with their arms. These gestures signal joy and excitement. On the flip side, if you're in a high stakes meeting and are super nervous, you're probably going to be more reserved with your illustrators, possibly using stiff or jerky movements. And if you think about it, we still use these nonverbals even if no one's there to see them, such as when we're on the phone. They're deeply rooted in our communicative behavior. You know what's funny, Alex? When I'm editing my YouTube lessons, I don't even realize that I'm using illustrators because they just flow naturally.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I'm sure most people would likely agree. They don't usually think about the exact gestures they use. And by the way, I will link to all of the sources that we are talking about in the description below this video, so you can take a look at those. So in addition to emblems and illustrators, could you give us more detail about how verbal and nonverbal communication overlap? How do these work together?
There are 6 different ways that nonverbal and verbal communication interact in real life. So the first one is repeating. You can think of this one as the nonverbal behavior reinforcing the verbal message. In other words, you are repeating your message because you are essentially saying the same thing. For example, saying "nice job" while giving a thumbs up achieves this. Or you might say, "Don't interrupt me," while putting your hand out as repetition. The second one, substituting. So with substituting, you're using a gesture or some other form of nonverbal communication in place of a word. For instance, you might give a high five instead of saying, "Wow, that's awesome, congratulations." Number 3, turn taking. This one is about relying on nonverbal communication to signal turn taking. Let's imagine you're in a group conversation and you notice that Jimmy hasn't gotten a chance to say anything yet. Noticing that, you might lean in and do an outwardly gesture facing Jimmy to signal that maybe they would like to say something. Number 4, complementing the verbal message. So with complementing, you can think of enhancing your verbal message with nonverbal communication. You can use complementing to drive home a point or to clarify a message. For example, if you're giving your manager a rundown of your team's epic progress this quarter, you might gesture an upward chart signaling growth. Number 5, emphasizing. If I'm looking to really emphasize my point, I might use a strong gesture. But I could also leverage paralinguistics, which includes tone of voice, volume, inflection patterns, and pitch. Or I might change my word pacing or add some dramatic pause for that extra oomph. These are a few examples of ways to truly accentuate your verbal message, especially in the context of a speech, presentation, meeting, or pitch. And the last one, number 6, contradicting. This one is pretty interesting. This occurs when your nonverbals contradict your spoken words. So for instance, let's imagine a friend tells you they are in so much pain, but they're smiling. These are contradictory, right? Or imagine that a friend tells you that they had so much fun hanging out, but they have a deadpan look on their face. It almost seems sarcastic, right? Well, even if they're not being sarcastic, it sticks out like a sore thumb because what they are saying does not match how they are saying it.
That's a really helpful list. And on the last point, contradiction, there is a related term for this when our nonverbal communication doesn't match up with our verbal communication. In a poker game, they call this a tell to see if you're bluffing. Researchers call this nonverbal leakage. And even if you say how you feel with your words, other feelings can leak out through your nonverbals. So can you tell us a little bit more about this?
I love the terminology for this concept because it is such a visceral image. We can think of nonverbal leakage as our gestures blowing our cover, so to speak, when we're attempting to conceal something. For example, if we verbally express one thing, but our body language, facial expressions, and tone of voice are screaming something else entirely, our nonverbals are leaking into our words and altering our message. In other words, there's a disconnect between what we're saying and how we are saying it. Research shows that in studies on deception, 98% of people expressed nonverbal leakage when they were trying to hide a charged emotion like anger, jealousy, depression, or dishonesty. So viewers might be wondering, well, what does nonverbal leakage look like? Tone of voice is a huge giveaway, and so are body gestures that misalign with the verbal message. But there's also something called micro expressions, where an emotion will flash across the person's face. But you'll have to pay close attention or you'll miss it, because these happen as fast as 1/15th to 1/25th of a second. The 7 micro expressions, happiness, surprise, fear, anger, sadness, disgust, and contempt, are universal and exist across most cultures. Funny story, on a recent skiing adventure, my husband decided it would be fun for us to go boot packing, meaning climbing up the mountain outside of the ski resort bounds. I was mortified because not only had I not been skiing in over 10 years, I had never been backcountry, where I would have to carry my skis up an icy mountain with all of my heavy gear on. But I could see that he was really excited about this. So I said, sure, that's awesome. But as I said that, my hands were trembling, I was sweating profusely, and my eyebrows were deeply furrowed. Major nonverbal leakage, right? Well, fortunately, I had my face mask and goggles on, so he couldn't see any of it. It wasn't until after we made it down the mountain that I fessed up about how nervous I was. Much funnier in retrospect.
That's a great example about how microexpressions and nonverbal leakage work and how our nonverbal and verbal communication can sometimes send a mixed message. So thank you for helping us out today, Mary Daphne. It was great to have you on the channel.
That was a lot of fun. Thank you so much for having me, Alex.
So I encourage you to follow the link in the description below the video to take a look at Mary Daphne's channel. Also, she'll be making a comment that I will pin to the top of the comments section. You can just click on her name and get to her channel that way, and be sure to say hi. So God bless, and I will see you all soon.
Okay, great. So, yeah, I think that this team, that they really do express these different terms very well. These emblems and the illustrators specifically, the type of those 6 areas of the repeating, substituting, turn taking, complementing, emphasizing, and that contradicting. That's the one that really sticks out to me, having to do with that poker face and the nonverbal leakage. Also in that having that versatile image where it really means there's this automatic deep inward feeling that kind of comes out and you're unaware of it. And so, yeah, I love the teamwork here. I have illustrated some of these just so you can make sure you got this information. Now, let's take a moment to do a quick review on some of these emblems and illustrators and gestures that Alex has shared with us, and Mary. I think that they were excellent illustrations. They referred to 6 different nonverbal gestures. Let's start with the first one we have here is repeating. The next one, substituting. I just put these here so you could, if you needed to take any further notes. The second one, again, substituting. And next, turn taking, relying on those nonverbal communication to signal it's your turn or to help someone else, join the group. Make sure that they feel important. Number 4, complimenting, enhancing a verbal message with nonverbal communication, complimenting. And then the number 5, emphasizing, to accentuate a verbal message, especially in speech, presentation, meeting, or a pitch. Contradicting, again, that's that one we just mentioned. Now, just to confirm, those 6 that we've identified, the first one is repeating, substituting, I've gone turn taking. So I'll go past. It's so exciting to be able to share these little nuggets of scientific proof. As mentioned, that even the FBI and certain researchers have found that these micro expressions that are so quick little nuances that overtake our faces, and they happen within like 1/15 or 1/20th of a second, as mentioned, have to do with these quick little expressions that our face automatically reacts to. They're referred to as micro expressions. They will arise having to do with areas of happiness, surprise, fear, anger, sadness, disgust, and contempt. So beware of how we utilize our micro expressions, and now that you know it, you're going to really be aware of it a little bit more. Okay, let's move on. Next, we're going to move into finding out more about the dimensions of effective team talk. We're going to join Jennifer Bridges as she explains the secrets of effective team communication. Of course, it is diverse and vast as far as the different techniques that she offers. However, she will go over goals and objectives and how we as individuals, of course, think differently, how we need a safe environment, and additionally, common vision in order to function well within team dynamics. Let's take a look.
Today we're talking about 7 secrets for effective team communication. What I've learned over many years and hundreds of teams is that people on teams really do want to communicate effectively. They just want to communicate in their way. Another thing I've learned is communication can seem quite complex, but if you boil it down, it can be really simple. So here are 7 secrets that have helped me. So number 1, know that people communicate and think differently. So learn the communication and thinking styles. Know your style, identify others, and then bridge the gap and speak their language. For instance, if you are a detail person and someone is a high-level person, just understand that maybe they don't need quite all the details that you do. So speak in their language. Number 2, build a safe environment. That builds trust and respect, which lends everyone open to think differently, think about other ideas that people have, and it gives people the comfort level to speak up. Number 3, acknowledge others' viewpoints. Again, listen. You don't necessarily have to agree. Sometimes when I am open to do that, I'm usually learn something different, and I'm swayed to think about things and do things a better way. So number 4, talk about the common vision or the common goal between everyone in the team. So that way you're not thinking about what's in it for you, you're thinking about the collective or the greater good. Number 5, build goals and objectives. Be specific and make sure everyone knows what they're supposed to be doing. Number 6, Have a purpose or an intention for every communication, whether it's a meeting, a phone call, or any kind of electronic communication. Know what you want everyone in the communication to leave knowing or doing. Also, know what you need from others. Be specific. Let them know what you need from them. Also, know what you can contribute to others. What are your strengths? What's your role? What are you able to provide to help people communicate more effectively and do what they need to do? And number 7, be positive and have fun. You can work hard and have fun and get things done. If you need additional resources for effective team communication, then sign up for our software now at projectmanager.com.
Okay, so this again has given us a new perspective about these secrets that we need to address having to do with team environments and or small group communication. So just real quickly, I've highlighted the sections that are most important. Know people, communicate and think differently. Also, build a safe environment. That is so important. We've discussed that earlier on, and knowing who's in the room and in that team environment, making sure you can trust others and gain their respect. Next, number 3 is acknowledge other team members and their viewpoints. Really learn to listen, give people a time to address and the issue and react. Number 4, talk about common vision and what are your goals and objectives. Make sure you're clear, make sure even that you have an agenda, you have your talking points, so you're not wasting others their time. Build goals and objectives, very, very important. Don't waste others' time. Time is important. Number 6, have a purpose and intention for every time you get together. Don't just get together and not have a purpose. And last, be positive and have fun. That's the most part. Celebrate those small milestones, you know, have some time to reflect, maybe outside of your team, have some team building activities as well. Okay, here we go. Next, let's refer back to what our textbook mentions about the 6 dimensions of effective team talk. Within that, there are 6 dimensions, one having to do with identification, independence, balanced power and differentiation, social empathy, conflict management, and negotiation talk. Now, these terms were specifically used by Anne Donnellan, and she describes that language can be derived from, for example, group members that use this dimension when they are talking and working together. By listening and listening to and analyzing how the group uses language, group members can discover how the group's language fosters and exhibits and inhibits success. So let's just take a look here. The information is listed here, and you can confirm the information and read a little bit more about this within your textbook. Okay, next, let's just go over the definitions that are involved in the team talk dimensions. And let's go ahead and get a volunteer that can review this information for us. Here we go. Okay, so as mentioned, I will take a volunteer. Would someone like to volunteer to go over these 6 different dimensions of team talk? Okay, how about, okay, great. Go for it.
Okay.
Thank you, Tage.
Do you want to read through all of them?
Yeah, just quickly, please.
Okay. The first one is identification. Use plural pronouns. Members use plural pronouns rather than singular ones when talking about the group and its work. And then interdependence. Use collective language. Members use language that acknowledges shared needs, solicits opinions, and expresses the need for cooperation. And then 3 is minimal power differentiation. Use considerate language. Members talk to one another on equal terms. Social equality. Use casual, informal language. Members use casual language, nicknames, slang. Members express empathy and avoid titles. And then conflict management. Use collaborative language. Members express interest in solving problems. Use a non-threatening tone and non-judgmental language, and paraphrase others. And then the last one is negotiation talk.
Yeah, so these are the true dimensions. Thank you so much, Tage. That we learn that we need to allow into our teams and our small groups. In this next section, we will identify specific language-based obstacles to effective communication. So let's go ahead and get right into it. Let's quickly review these techniques that are suggested that can help teams and individuals avoid or confront verbal abuse. Let's avoid using abstract words, concrete words, bypassing, offensive language, jargon, dialect, and code switching. Yeah, you know, in our groups, we tend to have an opinion. It could be a silent opinion. We have certain judgments that we do have and we come across. And so we want to make sure that we are not derogatory in how we are presenting ourselves and our attitudes. So make sure that we're clear in our communication, polite and respectful. It's important for us to be aware of obstacles and barriers that exist and block effective communication, such as physical barriers that really exist as well. So let's just go over and think about a few type of barriers that we can use once we are aware of these barriers and perceived barriers that can help us or improve communication and those skills that we need. For example, procedural barriers, emotional barriers, cultural barriers, language, gender, interpersonal, and basic withdrawal. So these are elements that we can also be aware of that can become barriers to effective communication. Next, let's take a look at this short video clip that describes 10 barriers that can lead to effective communication. Let's take a look.
Ten barriers to effective communication. 1. Physical barriers. These are such things as inadequate equipment, such as outdated computers, phones with poor signals, background noise, poor lighting, temperatures that are too hot or too cold, tangible items that may interfere with communication efforts. 2. Attitudes. Sometimes strong emotions like anger or sadness can taint your objectivity. Being extremely nervous, having a personal agenda, or asserting a need to win the argument can make communications less than effective. Such interfering emotions are also known as emotional noise. 3. Language. This may seem like a minor obstacle, but even people who speak the same native language can have difficulty understanding each other if they are from different generations or different regions of the same country. Slang, professional jargon, and regional colloquialisms can hurt communicators with even the best intentions. 4. Physiological barriers. Ill health, poor eyesight, hearing difficulties, and pain are all physiological obstacles to effective communication. 5. Problems with structured design. Companies or institutions can have unclear organizational structures, making communications difficult. Bad information systems, lack of supervision, and employee training are also to blame for faulty communications. 6. Cultural noise. People sometimes make assumptions about others based on their cultural background and associated stereotypes. 7. Lack of common experience. It's a great idea to use examples or stories to explain or enhance a point. However, if others cannot relate to these examples because they do not have the same knowledge or shared experiences, then this tool will be ineffective. 8. Ambiguity and overuse of abstractions. Leaving things half said or using too many generalizations, proverbs, or sayings can lead to lack of clarity, which in turn lends itself to misinterpretation. 9. Information overload. It takes time to process large quantities of information, and too many details can overwhelm and distract the audience from the important topics. 10. Jumping to conclusions. Making assumptions before listening to all the facts can be problematic in the least and catastrophic at worst.
Yeah, I just think that this is a great illustration of barriers that we can all avoid and not making these mistakes. But we first of all just need to be aware of these barriers, that they actually do exist. I'd like to ask Alexis. Alexis, can you please give me your opinion as to any of these that may have affected you, or that have, you just want to comment on as being a barrier that you've experienced in a group or team setting? Alexa, are you there? No, can I get another volunteer? How about Jennifer? Jennifer, are you there? Have I lost my students? Hello? I see you here, but I don't hear you. Olivia, are you there?
Yeah.
Hi, Olivia. Thanks for coming to my rescue. Okay. All right. So with this list that we've just gone over, physical barriers, attitudes, emotional noise, language, slang, psychological issues, having, being in pain while you're in a meeting, structural design where you're freezing or you're too hot, cultural noise, and making the assumptions about what other people might be thinking or feeling, lack of experience, jumping to conclusions, and information overload. Any of these that stand out to you that that you've been aware of?
For me, and just what I've been hearing around in my household with their work, they had some issues with the structural design of a company and their superiors, and having their superiors having conclusions about them that leads to a lot of ineffective communication and frustration on both ends.
Absolutely, yeah. Most of these barriers that we're specifically discussing do have to do within the workplace, and oftentimes we as employees don't really have too much of a voice in there. So that can definitely be a distraction and cause a lack of progress and work as well. Thank you so much for sharing your opinion, Olivia. I really appreciate it. So just for you that wanted to know about what those barriers are, there is that list if you just need to write it down or go over any of that. Okay. All right, so we have a few more items to confirm, and so we'll go ahead and just move forward on the next section. In the next section, we will examine certain challenges of interpreting these nonverbal messages and adapting. So, for example, these nonverbal cues can be difficult for us to interpret, of course, because they can be very subtle and unclear. So, these nonverbal influences that come in the form of nonverbal communication, such as we've talked about facial expressions and gestures and body language. Let's take a look here at this next video clip and see how we can utilize this new information.
In times of ambiguity, employees may experience a range of emotions. Sometimes anxiety, frustration, and uncertainty can be hard to notice. What can managers do to support their team's mental health during these unique times? Listen, pay attention, ask. People's nonverbal communication cues, the way they listen, look, move, and react, is a natural part of communication. In fact, research shows up to 93% of communication impact comes from nonverbal cues. Tuning in to nonverbal cues can help managers gain valuable insight into their teams. However, in today's remote workforce, nonverbal cues are limited to facial expressions. So the simple act of paying attention to nonverbal cues can be challenging. Let's take a look.
How is everyone doing today?
Oh, fine.
Okay.
Great.
Heads up, I'm going to set up one-on-ones with each of you this week to check in. Now let's dive into the project updates. I noticed you looked frustrated on the video call. Is there something that I can help you with? I noticed you were quiet on the call. I wanted to get your thoughts on the project. How do you think it's going? I noticed you looked confused on the call. I wanted to check in and make sure you're understanding the project requirements.
Managers don't need to fix things for employees, but they can work to create a positive space that allows for productivity and improved performance. While some people are highly skilled at interpreting nonverbal communication, others may need to make an effort. Listening, paying attention, and asking your employees about nonverbal cues will make you a better communicator and a better teammate.
Simple tips that can help us all with regard to adapting to these in the next section from individuals. So we need to make sure, as a recap to the video, it suggested that it's so important for us to do a few things when we are looking into these verbal and nonverbal cues, especially in today's society when we are doing so much on Zoom and remotely. We need to be able to make sure we are aware of verbal cues that are taking place. So first, we need to remember to pay attention. Listen, pay attention to others, ask questions. We found out that there's like 93% of nonverbal cues that we should be aware of. We need to be aware of when we are viewing and watching physical appearances of others, specifically on these Zoom calls and in meetings, of the certain posture and the attitude that is coming across from individuals, such as when individuals are folding their arms. It may be that they are a little defensive. Also, they could be frustrated. Maybe there's some cues of that, maybe some heavy breathing and sighing. What about that person that has nothing to say, completely silent? Kind of like a passive aggression that takes place. And then also that individual that might not have a clear understanding of what's going on. they might be a little confused. So we need to make sure that we are allowing these cues to be observed and to, if needed, go back and ask questions separately and not to embarrass anyone, and in order to provide a positive space. As we are winding down, we're going to look into one of the close to the end of our different topical suggestions, as we're looking to responses to gender and influence, such as culture-based differences having to do with language usage. We're going to look at how does gender influence language, and what are gender roles influenced by, and how does age affect language. We know that culture can be defined as, behaviors, ideas, and traditions that exist throughout cultural groups. And in relation to gender and the effects of cultural influences can really be seen as how we examine differences between male and female responses and cultural influences. So let's take a look at this quick video clip and see how we can learn some new information.
The ability to communicate clearly is a key function for all people. Being able to communicate effectively in an individual's first home language connects a person to their ethnic group and helps to shape a person's identity. The Aboriginal cultures of Australia are the oldest living cultural history in the world, dating back up to 65,000 years. The key to their survival was a close-knit community where everyone cared about the well-being of each other. Language is an integral element of this culture. Around 200 years ago, there were over 250 Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander language groups in Australia. Today, around only 120 Aboriginal languages are still spoken, and many are at risk of being lost. Language provides a connection to culture, stories, spiritualities, rites, ceremonies, and the land. Each language is associated with an area of land and has a deep spiritual significance. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander languages are not just a means of communication. They express cultural knowledge passed down through songlines and spoken stories about everything: law, geography, history, family, and human relationships, religion, childcare, healthcare, caring for country, and basic survival. Cultural knowledge, kinship, songlines, and stories are reliant on language for these important cultural elements to be passed on from generation to generation. It is through language that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people maintain their connection with their ancestors, land, and law. Traditionally, Aboriginal people use songlines and stories in their own language to pass down the law and Dreamtime stories that are the foundations of their cultural beliefs. Over time, the breakdown of language and culture can lead to loss of culture and loss of identity. Aboriginal people had a complex cultural system long before the establishment of colonial settlements in Australia. They lived and were supported by Aboriginal law. This law gave them protection, security, and shaped their culture that has evolved over millions of years. It defined acceptable behaviour and helped to manage unacceptable behaviour. Justice-related issues were handled by the elders. It was reinforced and passed on through generations, through songs, stories, and dance, and it governed all aspects of traditional life. Today, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people face a variety of issues, including health problems, unemployment, homelessness, poverty, drug and alcohol, mental illness, suicide, and family violence. These complex issues can effectively be communicated with a broad brushstroke approach. Recent studies have shown positive associations between language use, well-being, and socio-economic variables. Communicating in language with Aboriginal people empowers them, gives them a sense of belonging, and helps them to clearly understand policies and procedures, particularly in areas such as the criminal justice system, so they can understand the impacts of their actions. Difficulties involved in communicating with Aboriginal and multilingual audiences are well documented. Because Aboriginal languages were traditionally only spoken, it makes sense that audio is the key to the communication gap. OneTalk talking products are the first set of integrated tools of its kind in Australia. And only through experience and direct consultation with elders of Aboriginal communities, OneTalk was able to develop a better understanding of language, cultural sensitivities, and communication issues in regional and remote areas across the Northern Territory. OneTalk products can reach a specific demographic within a regional or remote community just by their placement. OneTalk products are the only way to effectively deliver a controlled message in language by the press of a button. Working with
I'm going to move off of this one because ideally we just wanted the information from learning how to communicate a little bit more effectively within cultures, within different sects of people. And I think they gave us a great illustration on that. Okay. So what we're learning and concentrating on is how nonverbal communication and gender has influence on, how we are involved in communicating with other genders. For example, we're going to, learn what women tend to say in certain situations, and in contrast, what men tend to say. This has to do with information that has been shared with us by Judith Hall in a survey that she has conducted throughout research, and how she's identifying the differences in between women and men and this nonverbal communication. For example, some of the things that women tend to use more facial expressions, they smile more, we use more eye contact, and additionally, expressive movements. We touch each other, we hug, and we like that affection. And we notice this in women and the attributes of women in their nonverbal communication. Where on the other hand, men tend to use more expansive movement, and they try to give this appearance that they're really relaxed and appear to be kind of nonchalant and less involved. Men tend to touch each other less. They shake hands more, and I'm not sure in our new society if that's going to take place anymore. But also they use a larger personal distance proximity. They don't really get too close and intimate with each other. So yeah, these are definitely some characteristics to observe in the differences between gender communication. Okay, I'd like to ask maybe Cassandra. Are you there, Cassandra?
Hello.
Hello, good morning, dear. So we're learning and kind of winding down and learning, all of these techniques and information having to do with verbal and nonverbal styles of communication. Now that we're getting into this gender difference with the styles of communication, can you add any information that you've learned, or do you agree or disagree with what women tend to do versus men tend to do? And do you find these that you do within your personal communication style?
I think for the most part, that's really accurate. You see like a lot of girls hang out like in groups, and we're very like, go get a coffee and start chatting and quote unquote gossip with each other more, versus guys just kind of hang out with the guys and maybe play video games or something, if that's even kind of like a stereotype of what you would see with our kind of communication skills with the type of genders. But yeah, I think that's pretty accurate.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the reason why it's important for us to know what the opposite gender tends to focus on or how they communicate, when we know that this is something that they tend to do, if we kind of mirror that, it will cause us to be able to be better communicators, especially within friendships and relationships. You know, we need to know this information of how to really exchange dialogue a little better in forms of communication. Thank you so much for sharing, Cassandra. All right, so this last portion has to do with dealing a little bit about theories. Well, we've certainly covered a lot of information and we're winding down with the lecture for today. However, it's important for us to take a look at the different theories and the theories within group dynamics. We're going to look at Whorf's hypothesis and how this theory claims that language reflects culture and influences how people think, act, and behave. Let's take a look.
Have you laughed when you see a guy walk straight into a fountain because he wasn't paying attention? Well, that's you taking pleasure in other people's misfortune. And the Germans called it Schadenfreude. Schaden means harm and Freude means joy. So, in English it's translated to harm joy. So how is it that the Germans have a term like Schadenfreude and we don't? Well, according to the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis, language affects how we perceive and think about the world around us, and that some thoughts and perception of individuals in one language cannot be understood by others who live with another language. There are two theories to this hypothesis: linguistic determinism, which stated that language determines how people think and feel, and linguistic relativity, which stated that language affects the way we perceive and experience the world. A study showed that Mandarin speakers are more likely to talk about time vertically. For example, last month is perceived as upward, while next month is perceived as downward. Additionally, in English, however, we are more likely to talk about time horizontally, where next month is perceived as forward and last month is perceived as backward. Also, the Borean people of Papua New Guinea perceive colors differently than ours. Researchers have shown that they only have 5 different color groupings, while we have 10 or more. So, back to Schadenfreude. We are familiar with this feeling of having pleasure from other people's misfortune. We just don't have a word for it like the Germans do. And so if the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis is true, then we shouldn't have any experiences or thoughts like Schadenfreude. With that being said, what do you think of the hypothesis? Is it true or not?
Okay. So we do learn quite a bit from what is said and what is not said. And this hypothesis states that, you know, language is truly something that reflects how we think, act, and behave. However, oftentimes it's misinterpreted because we really don't know where people are coming from. So I love this idea of what was mentioned having to do with the time or a calendar. While living in China, you know, I would always refer to this Monday we will work on etc. blah 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 blah, and it would always be a question: do you mean this Monday coming up or the next Monday, you know, a week from today? And to me, it was very clear. If I'm talking about on Sunday, where on Monday, this Monday, we will do this, this, and this. But because of their time, that they perceive time as this last Monday or the next Monday. So it's how it is specifically interpreted is a good example of this Whorf hypothesis. And in this last section, we're going to learn how to distinguish between the types of listening. And there are specific types of listening, such as the 3 types that are most common in interpersonal communication, having to do with informational listening, where we're listening to learn, and there is critical listening, where we're listening to really evaluate and analyze, and then there is the final area, which is therapeutic or empathetic listening, having to do with how we listen to understand, such as with feeling and emotion. So it's very important in learning ways to listen appropriately. Let's take a look at this video.
I'm not sure about the difference of listening and hearing. Listening, it seems to me, has real intentionality to it and purpose. Hearing is something that we do just picking up the sounds that are in an environment, our words and sounds and everything that's happening around us. Listening, though, it seems to me, has to be somewhat understood in terms of the kinds of listening that are likely to happen. Two kinds of listening can be counterproductive. One is evaluative listening, in which when I listen to you, I'm evaluating your words, I'm evaluating your thoughts. Are you right? Are you wrong? Are you like me? Not like me? Good theology? Bad theology? That's evaluative listening, and that's usually counterproductive. And then there's another kind of listening that's self-referential. What that means is I listen to you only until you take a breath so that I can talk. And that kind of listening really is meaningless. It's really just hearing your words. It has nothing to do with careful listening. Probably the best kinds of listening are those that call for understanding. I listen to try to understand what you're saying. I listen for your emotions, the intonation of your words, what you're attempting to say. I also listen for things that I would like to explore further so that I unpack more and more of your agenda. That kind of listening is very powerful because it communicates some very high respect and honor toward the other person.
Yeah, I think that this really clarifies a lot of how we do listen and how we tend to listen with intention, which can be for our favor and for our good, not necessarily listening for true understanding. So I think we've gotten quite a bit of information from today's lecture. I'd like to know if anyone has any final questions or comments before we close out for the day. Okay. This last section is about this nonverbal environment, and I think this is, let's just double check this and we'll close out on this since no one has questions. Finally, we're going to look at the nonverbal aspect having to do with the environment, and specifically looking into ways of analyzing the section of the room. This goes back to the assignment that we're working on, having to do with that environment and how we look at different zones of interpersonal space and group communication, specifically having to do with space and how to arrange the arrangement of space. Also personal space, what about territory, and what about that nonverbal distance? Some of us have this hands off, give us our personal space. And also the intimate distance, personal distance, and social distance. So we've learned quite a bit today having to do with these messages of verbal, nonverbal, and listening techniques, strategies, and barriers. So I think we're going to end here and pick up with some time for questions, comments, and I so appreciate you being involved with today's lecture, and let's take it away. Okay, with that being said, do you have any questions having to do with the assignment? I will post it on LoudCloud in the announcement so you'll know specifically what's needed. And other than that, Yeah, we'll probably just touch bases very briefly on Friday, because you will be working on this particular project. So if you can go ahead and get started on it, and we will probably have some discussion with regard to what we'll be working on with this assignment. I do have a question. Would you want to work on the assignment in teams or as individually? Anyone? Okay, Dave says on Teams. Okay, that'll be fine. So what we'll do on Friday is, once we get started, we'll go ahead and get the team set up, and then you guys can go ahead and work on your project together. Okay? All right, guys. Thank you so much for showing up today, and I will see you Friday on Zoom, and we'll work on the project having to do with your visual perception of your room dynamics. All right, guys. Have a good one.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye.
Miss Eagles?
Yes.
I just had a question. I just sent you a forum a couple of days ago. I don't know if you've seen it. It was about my paper. I was just wondering if...
A form about your paper?
Yeah. It says I got a 0 for the paper. I just wanted to know if there was anything happened or anything I can do on my end to help.
Actually, it wasn't posted. Where did you post it?
Oh, it wasn't? Okay.
It wasn't posted.
I can go check again.
Yeah,
and
so
I'll email you.
Yeah, that's why earlier I did have LoudCloud pulled up, because I wanted to go over that with you, because I thought it was unlike you to post your paper. And so I was like, what? So I'm glad that, you spoke up, but it was not posted on LoudCloud. So if you go back and review it, and then we'll just follow up a little bit via private forum is good. But make sure, but it wasn't uploaded for whatever reason. Okay?
Sounds good. I'm sorry about that.
No worries. Thanks for bringing it up, okay?
No worries. Have a nice day.
Bye-bye. Hi, I see David and Cassandra. Do you guys have questions? And Vitalik?
Yeah, I was wondering if you made new teams, because I wasn't here on Friday.
Oh, yeah, we basically made teams of them for the individuals that were not, or if you were present, then you would definitely be on a team. So were you able to be involved in a project at all?
No, that was my next question. Did you just want me to do the whole selecting a leader by myself?
Well, unfortunately, you might have to, because all the other teams have already posted,
Okay.
So, yeah. If you can do that, that'd be great. And then I will make sure you can send that to me, and then I can go ahead and add you onto a team for sure for next week, on Friday. Okay? But
all right, thank you.
Go ahead and get me, the information. It's not that long of a process, but unfortunately, since you weren't, on the team, it'd be best if you just do it separately.
Okay, no problem. All right, thank you.
I'll see you Friday.
Okay.
Okay, we'll get you set up on a team.
All right, thank you.
Sure. Bye-bye. Hi, Cassandra.
Hello. Mine was just more of a comment, but do you remember having a student called Gavin Spanks?
Yes.
That's my brother. And so when I was talking about you, he told me about you and that he loved having you and all.
Oh my gosh, it was just like, okay, I was like, wait, I'm holding on to what he possibly said. Did I have him with public speaking, or did I have him with elements? Did he say which one?
He said it was a 100 something class. I could always ask him to find out for sure. But
it must have been fundamentals of communication. but because I typically don't teach the 100 classes, so I'm not, yeah, ask him. But yes, I definitely remember that. It was a pleasure having him in my class, and it's so cool to see, you know, his sister. That's so cool.
Yeah, I just transferred to GCU, so it's funny that I got like one of his old professors and all.
Where did you transfer from?
I've transferred from 2 colleges now. My whole freshman year I came from Colorado State University, and then just the first semester of my sophomore year I was at Arizona State, where we moved here to Colorado, not Colorado, but Arizona.
Right.
And then finally last semester was like my kind of first semester at GCU, but now this is gonna be my full semester because COVID interrupted it and all, but.
Yeah, how do you like GCU?
I love it. Since clearly Gavin, he graduated last semester. I wasn't unfamiliar with the school, but it's really fun that I worked my way to his school after all.
Oh yeah, oh no, I remember, yeah, he was in my 400 series.
Oh never mind.
Yeah, he was in organizational communication, and he was one of my team leaders. Oh my gosh, he was so brilliant. I really love so much. You know, he is so compassionate and
yes.
Right. So yeah, so I definitely know him. You know.
Yeah, he's my big brother, and I look up to him. And yeah, he's a leader, and all I know he definitely is.
He really is. He really did contribute to that class. So please send him my best, and I'm so glad to have you as well, so I can keep.
Yay. Me too.
All right, dear. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Thank you.
Okay. See you later.
Good one.
You too. Bye-bye. And that's it for today.